We're going to discuss today a little bit concept of New Year's and how does that how is a Ben Noach supposed to relate to that? And we're going to also touch upon the Jew and Ben Noach, the Jew and the New Year's, and see is there a difference between the Jew and the non-Jew. So let me just first give a little bit of background. According to the Torah, creation, God created the world 5,782 years ago and 4 months. 6 days of creation, as described in the beginning of the Torah, in the beginning of the Bible, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1. Those days were 24 hours as we have today. The creation of time and space. Now, then after the flood, certain things shifted a little bit, but basically it's the same world as it is from creation. We have seasons, and we have the sun that makes its round. We have the moon, many planets, constellations. So time is measured by motion. So we know the day is a 24-hour day, basically from sunrise to sunrise or sunset to sunset. So day goes by the sun. Then we have the cycle of the moon, which is a monthly cycle. The moon does its cycle in roughly 29 and a half days. 29 days and about 12 hours, roughly. We know exactly how long it takes. So the moon cycle is a monthly cycle. So the moon starts, it appears, and it appears to get bigger and bigger until about 14, 15 days into the month, and then there's a full moon, and then it begins to get smaller, waxes and wanes. Now, there are a bunch of calendars that different religions or cultures or nationalities have. We're going to talk about two. The Jewish calendar is a lunar calendar, and therefore there really isn't a set number of months. Every month is a unit for itself, and it's almost arbitrary. You could make 1 month and call that a year, or you can go on 10 months, 12 months, 13, 14, 15, 24 months, could you call it 1 year. It's arbitrary in and of itself, if not for what I'm about to tell you. Now, the solar calendar, which we're just going to go with what we call the Gregorian calendar, what we're familiar with. Now that goes by day, so there's days. There's no months. The months are totally irrelevant, they're arbitrary, but there is a year. And basically a year is 365 days and about 6 hours, meaning to say that the cycle of the sun, that it takes it to make a full whatever, is 365 and a quarter days. So there's no months in a solar year, and there's only months in a lunar year. So they divided it up, whatever, into 12 months. And therefore, since it's 365 divided by 12, so every month He's got whatever it is, 30, 31 days. Now, and for that matter, by the way, every 4 years, we have what's called a leap year, and you have February 29th, because those 6 hours after 4 years, that's 24 hours. So you'll notice, how often do we get a February 29th? It's every 4 years. Because after that, because we caught up, we got a full day, because we don't start New Year's any other time than midnight going into January 1st. Otherwise, New Year's would be 1 year at 6 a.m., the next year at 12 noon, the next year at 6 p.m., and only then. So we don't do that. So it's after 4 years, we've caught up, and then again, we do only February 28th, February 28th, February 28th, and then February 29th. That's all arbitrary. Why February only has 28 days, other months have 31 days. The names of the months also, that's all, whatever, made up stuff, different, idolatrous stuff, whatever it may be, whatever the beliefs and where they got it from. Now, the seasons of the year are only on the solar calendar. The Jewish calendar, which is a lunar calendar, has nothing to do with seasons. There are no seasons. All you have is month after month after month after month. Seasons don't make sense there. Seasons have basically nothing to do with the moon cycle. Whereas the solar calendar, now that has 4 seasons. So if anything, you don't have 12 months, but you have 4 seasons. And every season is about 91 days. So that's what you have. So a solar year should be made up of days and 4 seasons. Forget the 12 months. That's made up. That's arbitrary. Now, I hope I'm being clear. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to the Jewish religion, we need to have not only a year, we need to have seasons, because the Torah specifically tells us that we have to keep certain holidays in particular seasons. For example, Passover has to be, as the Torah says, in the month of spring. Now, the problem is, there is no month of spring. We left in a particular month, and that ends up being what we now call the month of Nisan. But because it's a solar calendar, and if it has 12 months, so it only has about 354, 355 days. And it's 11 days short, and you're gonna end up moving it. And before you know it, it won't take too long. Instead of bringing in the spring, it will be in the winter, and then wait a little bit, and it will actually be in the summer. And then it'll come back to, fall, it'll be winter, fall, summer, and then back to spring. And it'll keep moving. And that's no good, because the Torah requires it to be in the spring. So how do we do that? So basically, we have a Jewish leap year as well, but it's not one extra day every 4 years. It's an extra month every 2 or 3 years. Because again, we lose 11 days a year. So after 2 years, we're 22 days behind. And then after 3 years, we're already 33 days behind. So it's every 2 to 3 years in this cycle. So there's a set cycle of the big picture is every 19 years, and it's very precise, and it's all calculated and so on. Now, biblically, these months have no names. There are months, and every month is 29 or 30 days, because there's no such thing as having a month with half a days. It has to be 29 or 30. So basically, it alternates between 29 and 30, basically, 29, 30, 29, 30. So 29 is a bit short, 30 is a bit long, but that's how it works. And the Torah demands that we do certain things on certain days. It says in the Torah, in the Chumash, in the Bible, in the written law, for example, what we now call Rosh Hashanah, has to be on the first day of the 7th month. Passover has to be on the 14th, 15th day of the first month. Sukkot has to be on the 15th day of the 7th month. Yom Kippur has to be on the 10th day of the 7th month. Okay, so all the months are numbered. They don't have names. The names came much later, after the destruction of the first temple, when the Jewish people were exiled in Babylon, which means we're going back about 2,500 years ago. And then we picked up names from the Babylonians and we adopted those names. So now the Jewish calendar with the Hebrew months are really originally from the non-Jewish Babylonians. And instead of saying seventh month, we call it Tishrei. Instead of saying first month, we call it Nisan. It just makes it easier. Now, similarly, on the Gregorian calendar, January is known as month number 1. So when you write any document or a check or anything, you can write 1, and then 2022. That means January the 1st. And it depends on which country you're in, whether the month comes first or the day comes first. So it could be confusing. So 1 is not a problem. But if you get to January 2nd and you write 1-2, for some people that means February 1st. For some people that means January 2nd. Okay, but we just get used to figuring it out. But my point is that the months are also numbered, besides names. So now, the Jewish people have, the Mishnah says there's 4 Rosh Hashanahs, 4 New Years within Jewish law. There's someone's coming in or something. Within the framework of Jewish law, there are 4 Jewish New Years. There's the most famous one, which is, of course, Rosh Hashanah. And then we're talking about New Year's and how that applies to Bnei Noach, what they need to know, and also as far as the Jews are concerned. So, all right. So there's other Rosh Hashanahs for practical, specific laws in the Jewish religion. The Jews have to know that on Aleph Tishrei, not on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, but different times. Anyway, so now the thing is like this. There's a verse in the Torah that says that this particular month, which is referring to the month of Nisan in the spring when we have Passover, is to be for you the first month. And therefore, some want to say that it's a problem for a Jew to refer to any other month as the first, such as January. So they prefer using the name January. And instead of writing 1/1/2022, they will write January 1, 2022. That's one opinion of a great rabbi of about 150 years ago. And he said to avoid calling any other month of any other type, of any other calendar by numbers, because the numbers belong to the Jewish months, and it's not even the first calendar month of the Jewish year, it's the 7th month. But that's a different discussion. Now, the calendar year begins on one particular month, Rosh Hashanah, and the biblical first month is the 7th month, the month of Nisan. At any rate, so a Jew is supposed to follow the Jewish calendar. But when it comes to seasons, we have no choice. Biblically speaking, of course, we have to follow the Gregorian calendar. Again, following that calendar is only convenient. We don't have to follow any calendar. We just have to figure out the seasons, and that would just be on a different Hebrew date every year, which is okay. Like, for example, there's a certain prayer that we say every day, 6 days a week, 3 times a day, in the prayer where we're asking for rain in the proper season. But it's a seasonal blessing, meaning it changes. In the winter season, we're asking for dew and rain. In the summer, we're not asking for the rain because it's not the season. We don't want the rain then. So when do we make the switch? Now, being that it's a seasonal one, we can't have a set Jewish date because, as we said, the seasons don't go by the Jewish date. So in the code of law, the way it's described for the Jew is 60 days after the season of Tishrei. Now that helps a lot. What's the season of Tishrei? Well, that's about 91 days after the season of Tammuz. So it's not giving you a set date because it keeps switching. Or what we do now is we cheat. And this has been the situation for past about 200 years. We cheat and we say, it's December 5th. That's the day. You don't have to calculate anything. When the non-Jewish Gregorian calendar says December 5th, that's when we make the switch to the winter prayer. So since when are the Jews going by non-Jewish date? We're not. Saying December 5th is just convenient. That's cheating. We're not doing it because it's December 5th. We're doing it because that's the day of the season. Now, so some Jews are concerned with that. Bottom line is, it's not a problem for a Jew to refer to or to write that January is the first month and December is the 12th month. It does not go against the biblical command that your first month shall be Nisan, or that month of Passover. So, a Jew, for convenience, because we're living amongst the nations of the world, etc., uses this calendar, and there's no problem with it. Now, the question is, and I'm going to get to the Bnei Noach in a moment, what about, can a Jew celebrate New Year's? In this case, January 1st. So, let me tell you one incident, and I cannot take responsibility for this. I wasn't there, nor did I hear it firsthand from the person who it allegedly happened with. But it's a very popular story, which doesn't make it true, but it's a very popular, well-known story amongst the Chabad Lubavitch circles. There was a very special, devoted student, disciple of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach. And that student's name, he was affectionately known as JJ, Rabbi Jacob J. Hecht. And he had a very unique relationship with the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. Like most other followers, did not have that type of an open relationship. It was more out of reverence and awe and fear. He had all of that, but the love was very open and revealed. He had a very open relationship. One time, when he had a private audience, and the audiences, depending on the years, were generally starting at 8 o'clock in the evening, and they would go until he finished people that were scheduled to that night. Oftentimes, it went all the way till the morning. And the reason why it was at night is because during the day, the Rabbi Melech HaMashiach is busy doing everything that he's supposed to be doing. So therefore, at night is when he can meet people. So it'll go all night even. So Rabbi Hecht was in the room having a private audience when, at one point, right in the middle, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach tells Rabbi Hecht, I don't know the exact words, it was in Yiddish, except for these three words. He tells him, oh, it's midnight right now. Happy New Year. And this was the night going into January 1st. It was New Year's Eve. And in general, we don't celebrate New Year's. He said, Happy New Year. Now, Rabbi Hecht was, of course, taken aback. He did not expect that. Happy New Year. And the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach continued because he saw his A surprise. So he said that there's a verse in the book of Psalms, chapter 20, chapter 87, that says, it's chapter 87, verse 6. It says, Hashem Yisbar B'chsev Amim, which the way they translate it in this particular siddur, the Lubavitch siddur with English, that Hashem will count in the register of people. Now, what that verse really means is something slightly different. I mean, according to some commentaries, it basically means that the only one who can know the true number of people at any given moment is Hashem. And there's a bunch of interpretations to that verse. But if you take the words literally, that Hashem, God, counts in the register of the nations. In other words, that even though it may not have any godly basis or any sanctity or anything holy about this calendar and about this counting, but the fact that the nations of the world use it, Hashem, God, uses it. He counts it for whatever. And therefore, based on that, he wished them Happy New Year, because it is New Year. Now, what's pretty amazing about that, when people hear this story, is that seemingly New Year's is kind of related to December 25th. And it has to do with that whole religion. And we know that when it comes to any type of idolatry, for the Jew at least, they have to stay completely away from it. But apparently, obviously, if the story is true, it's not a problem. Now, I will tell you a story that I was witness to. I was there. I saw this myself. And it was many years after the story with Rabbi Hecht. New Year's then was like this year. It was Friday night. It may have been the year 2000. I mean, I know that the year 2000 was Friday night. That was Y2K. And all the Shabbos observers who were, not in front of their computers when it turned from 1999 to 2000. The whole world was scared what's going to happen to everything. It's all going to crash. You remember Y2K. So it may have been Y2K. Actually, I'm pretty sure it was. And Shabbos morning, Saturday morning, I was the only witness to this story. There were two rabbis, one of which is neither of them are living anymore. One of them was the authority in Jewish law. Someone else is joining. The authority in Jewish law for the Lubavitch Chabad community. Because the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach himself generally does not give legal rulings. So this rabbi, his name was Rabbi Marlowe, whom I was extremely close to. I had a great privilege of really knowing him very, very well. And I was very close to him. I would stay in his apartment with his family. And the other rabbi in the story was a great person in his own right, Rabbi Gurari, Rabbi Zalman Gurari. Anyway, it was Saturday morning, January 1st, and Rabbi Gurari was in the middle of praying. He was in the middle of reciting Psalms, so he wasn't speaking. He didn't want to interrupt. And Rabbi Marlowe tells him, "Good Shabbos," and said to him in Yiddish, "Have a good year." And then he explained, because quoting this verse that we knew that supposedly the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach said to Rabbi Hecht. if you're following the story. Hashem Yisbarich Sevamim. God counts in the register of the nations. So that's what this great rabbi said to this other rabbi. And Rabbi Gurari refused to accept that blessing of a good year. And he went, He was going like this, motioning. And he said two words, Abizrayu Avodah Zarah, which is a term used, a Talmudic term and a halachic term, a Jewish legal term, where anything which has to do with, even though it's not the thing itself, of idolatry. He doesn't want to have anything to do with idolatry. And therefore, he refused to receive the good wish of have a good year on January 1st. But as far as I'm concerned, being that Rabbi Marlowe said it, that's 100% acceptable. Obviously, Rebbe Melech HaMashiach, that's nothing can compare to that. But I didn't see that. I didn't even hear it from Rabbi Hecht. But this story with Rabbi Marlowe and Rabbi Gurari, I was with. So therefore, for a Jew to acknowledge New Year's is not a problem. For a Jew to count January is the first month, February is the second, and so on, is not a problem. Now, does that mean that a Jew should celebrate New Year's? What does celebrate mean? Balloons, streamers, champagne? What does celebrate mean? But to acknowledge it is not a problem. Okay, now let's get to the point. What about Bnei Noach? So is it possible that for Bnei Noach it's worse than for a Jew? That's difficult to say. So one problem is that Maimonides rules that Bnei Noach are not permitted to make a new religion or to institute new religious customs. And that was the whole discussion we had about Thanksgiving. So to acknowledge New Year's is obviously not a problem. And to celebrate it, so if it's being celebrated as a religious day, like it's an extension of that which began on December 25th, that would be a problem because it is related to the belief in the religion, which is idolatrous. Well, depending on exactly what faction of the religion, whatever, all the various different dozens of types of Christianity or Catholicism or whatever. But if it's just partying because new calendar year, just like you party on your birthday, party on your anniversary, it's an excuse to party. I don't think that's a problem, as long as the party is, of course, proper and appropriate, and you have all the other issues, but that would apply to any party. So as long as the behavior in the party is in accordance with proper behavior, the fact that the party is being held on the night of New Year's, I don't think is a problem. And surely one can wish the other a Happy New Year. If a Jew can wish another Jew a Happy New Year, so as long as it's not directly connected with anything idolatrous, so then non-Jews, the Bnei Noach, can mark it, and as far as I understand, can even celebrate it in a social setting, as a national day, or whatever, as long as it's not a religious day, even though it started off as such, and that's why it's that particular day. Forget about the fact that it's off. It's about a week off anyway, since they moved the calendar, and they I forget what year it was, but they messed the calendar up anyway. So it's not really the right date anyway. That's why I think in Russia it's January 6th is December 25th, and therefore the whole thing is 2 weeks off. So it's not even the right day, but that's besides the point. And it's permitted to call the months by their names, even though the names have to do with paganism. But since that's not what we mean, and as long as you're not worshiping it, which is a whole different discussion about the astrology, and as far as the horoscope, that's a different issue. If that's okay or not to follow the horoscope, but that's something else. But just to refer to the, superstitions and whatever it is, to refer to the months by their names is not a problem. To refer to them by numbers is not a problem, and to celebrate New Year's as a secular, social day that's marking the new calendar year should be okay. That's what I have to say about New Year's. Questions?
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Usually I come up with one. Okay, in Canada, they, the government or I guess they have a federal holiday for, I think it's like Good Friday for, was it Easter? And how would a Noahide up there deal with basically a religious federal holiday? I mean, does it matter? I mean, they can take the day off and whatever. And
It's a good question. Well, first of all, they don't have any control as far as any of the federal offices. If the banks are closed, the postal service, all those federal offices are closed. It's a vacation. It's a holiday, as they call it. So there, the person has no choice. But you're asking, good question, can a person take the day off? So I would say the theoretical answer is no. Now, the question, though, is practically speaking, each situation, like, why do you have off? So if you're just saying, I don't believe in it and I don't care for it, but hey, they're giving me a day off, why not? That would be like any other day that you don't go to work, because according to Maimonides, they're not allowed, a Ben Noach cannot have a Sabbath, not only on Saturday or Friday night going to Saturday, but they cannot have any Sabbath-like day, any day of the week. They're supposed to work 7 days a week. And they're not supposed to take off religiously any day. So I guess that as long as the person in their mind, it's a matter of attitude, is only taking a day off because they don't mind not working today, but it's not with religious intent, that should be fine. But let's say you have your own shop, you're self-employed, or you're working for someone and it's a much more intimate setting of employer and employee. So then I would say you should avoid that being your day off. Take a day, a week before, a week after, not that day, because it does have religious implication. But if you're working for a corporation and you don't have a choice, or if you're working in a bank or in a post office or wherever else, I would say avoid taking off. And of course, you can get paid time and a half or whatever it is if you work, let's say, in a hospital or in a police station or a fire department, any of those places. Presumably people that do work on those types of days, like New Year's Eve, get paid extra. So you can just take advantage of that. I don't think it's a problem getting paid extra because it's a religious day. I mean, I don't think you have to worry about taking that money. You follow the answer?
I did, and I also thought about Christmas in in North America. So yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to celebrate it. No one's asking you to go to the house of worship or to to do any of the customs that they do, whatever it may be, each one of them, but you're just not working. There's a concept in Jewish law for Jews about following well, no, I don't want you to get confused. I don't want to you're going to misinterpret what I'm saying. There is a concept of Jews, if there are two different Jewish customs, both legitimate Jewish customs, and in one place on a particular day, they don't work. And in another place, they do. And they're both legitimate because it's not a day that's forbidden to work, but they have a certain custom that they don't work on a particular day. So it says that in that case, not to be confused with what we're talking about, but you'll see what I'm getting to. In that case, you're supposed to follow the custom of your of where you are. But there's also the idea of being strict. So if a person is a native of a place that doesn't work on that particular Jewish religious day, and they're coming to a place where they do work, so what do you do then? So let's say vice versa. You come from a place that does work. So your personal custom is you do work on this Jewish day. And then you come to a place that doesn't, and you can't work because they don't work. And if you work, that would be sort of not violating their day, but it would be causing divisiveness. What about vice versa? You have a custom not to work, and you're coming to a place that does do work. So do you have to do work? So there the law is for the Jew, no, you don't have to work. What about being concerned with making this, divisiveness? Why don't you? Because the expression is, by not working, you're not making a statement. If nobody's working and you're working, that's a statement. But if everyone's working and you're not, there are many people that are unemployed or take a day off. So you're not working is not pronouncing a statement. So using that logic, I'm saying in these days where they give off for religious reasons, clearly it starts with an observance of a religious thing that you want to have no part of. So by you simply refraining from working like everyone else, that doesn't prove that you're observing it. You're not going to work. Some people never go to work. Some people have every Friday off, not Good Friday or bad Friday. Some people, whatever. So that would be in that. But the person, of course, can't do anything, even with the argument that, I'm just doing it culturally. I'm not really doing it religiously, which I do want to throw in because we got a comment from last class. I then said something to the effect that most of the people in this part of the world, at least, do not religiously celebrate December 25th and all that. And the whole thing of putting a tree and the gifts, they're just doing it as a cultural thing, but they're not really doing it as devout, pious believers or observers, I should say. So someone sent a comment and he said, actually, there are many Catholics that do. So if that's the case, fine, I stand corrected. And if there's a very high percentage of people that do go to whatever they call it, midnight mass or whatever the observance is, and I stand corrected. I just assumed that it's relatively a small percentage. Could be I'm wrong. So you understand how, as far as taking the day off goes?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Are there rules of how to celebrate New Year's? Or it's basically they have that big ball and the countdown, and no rules. Is there an official custom, at least in this country, of how to do it? Like 4th of July, there's certain customs, right? They have to have fireworks and barbecue. You have to have barbecue. right?
There's customs to stay up till midnight,
Yeah,
and there's customs to make resolutions.
right. Good New Year's resolutions. That's right. And when you stay up till midnight, could it be in private, or it has to be with a crowd?
There's a lot of people that feel that they have to stay up.
And you can't
And
just go to
so
sleep.
they can, yeah.
Can't just go to sleep at 9 or 10 and then wake up in the morning and say, "Well, now it's New Year."
There's a lot of people that have this obsession about staying up, and not everybody, but
Uh-huh.
Not me.
No. Do you remember Y2K?
I remember Y2K.
Nothing happened,
Nothing happened.
and people were really seriously concerned.
And it kind of made sense, you know, I mean, they did scramble a lot to reprogram a lot of clocks and stuff like that. They did do it was tight.
Yeah, it's very funny to think that we're so far advanced and we have computers, and yet we didn't know. We weren't sure. Will it? You know, goes to show you that with all the advancement of man and everything that we have, there's still that uncertainty. We're still at someone's mercy. All right, let us begin um, some of the laws in Maimonides where we're up to with the remaining time that we have. Back to Maimonides. We skipped a little bit because of that weekly portion, and then we spoke about different things. We're up to chapter 9. I believe we're up to paragraph or law number 5. Okay, so what we discussed until now out of the 7 was the first one was idolatry, avodah zarah. The next one was blasphemy. And the next one was murder. So we covered 3 so far. So now we're up to the 4th one in this particular order. So it's Laws of Kings, chapter 9, law or paragraph 5. Sheish, and I'm going to read the Hebrew. Sheish aroyos asures al bnei Noach. There are 6 individuals that are considered adultery or incest for Bnei Noach. In other words, this list is different than the Jewish list. Some of it is the same, but it's not the Jewish list. For the Jews, it's all enumerated in the book of Leviticus. It's very clear exactly who a Jew can or cannot marry or be with. The 6 for Bnei Noach. Now we're talking to the man. So for a moment, listen to it as if you're the male. Ha'im, his mother. So in other words, translating it for a woman, it would be your son. Number 2, the Eshes Ha'av, and the wife of his father. Doesn't have to be his mother. His father is married to someone else. So it's his biological father who's married to some woman. She is forbidden. So again, translating that for a woman, that would be her husband's son. It's not necessarily a stepson, but maybe it is. Maybe the legal term is stepson, because it's not an adopted son, but stepson, I guess, would be right. Your spouse's child is your stepson. So a woman who's a Noachite cannot have relations or marry out of wedlock or marriage, doesn't matter. Both are forbidden with her husband's son. Number 3, ve'eshes ish, a married woman, which again for the woman means that if she's married to one man, to her husband, she cannot have relations with any other man as long as she's married. Number 4, v'achoisoi me'imoi, and his maternal sister. Okay, so it's specifically a maternal sister, which again, for her, that would mean maternal brother, if a woman is learning this. So a woman's maternal brother, meaning if they share the same mother, a maternal sister, sorry, a maternal brother. They share the same mother. But if they're only brother and sister paternally, technically speaking, biblically speaking, they're allowed to get married. Brother and sister, if it's only through the same father, if it's paternal, they're allowed to get married. Uzichur, again, we're talking to the man, and a male. So this, of course, opens up the whole discussion and the whole thing of homosexuality. So it is forbidden to, whether it's at the time legal or not legal, same gender, it's forbidden for a man to have marital relations with another man. Whether it's called marriage or not is irrelevant. It's forbidden for a man to have relations with a man. Uvehema, with an animal. Bestiality, that's called? Bestiality. Bestiality, yeah. With an animal. Yeah, and it's going to get into detail, but again, we're talking that primarily at this point, that it's the man who's not allowed to have relations with a female animal of any sort. But it would work the other way as well, that a woman is not allowed to have relations with a male animal. And now, interestingly, Maimonides quotes the verses in the book of Genesis, which is speaking about the 7 Noahide laws, and tells us from exactly which word or which expression in the verse we derive this list, these 6 forbidden relations. Shenemar, as it says, this is talking by the creation of Adam and what they call Eve, Adam and Chava. Al Kain, therefore, Yazov Ish, a man should leave Es Aviv, his father. See, well, first let me tell you the whole verse. The verse reads, therefore, a man should leave his father and his mother, and he should cleave, he should stick to his wife, and they should become one flesh. That's the verse. So now we're using that verse to understand it legally. What is it hinting to? When it says leave your father, Zoyeshes Aviv, that's the prohibition against having marital relations with his father's wife. That would be his stepmother, I guess. Ves Imoy. And then it says to leave his mother. Kemashma, like it sounds. Simple. Can't have relations with his mother. Vidovak be'ishtoi, and he is to cleave to his wife. It's got to be his wife exclusively, not someone else's wife. Be'ishtoi, again, this word with his wife, and not male, meaning a man has to marry a wife. Man can't marry a husband. Now, in today's twisted world, what do they call it when, I guess, I don't know, when 2 men choose that lifestyle and they legally marry each other? They call partner? What's the legal terminology? Or is one a husband? No, neither of them is a wife. Do they call one a wife legally?
I think they just call them husband and husband.
Husband and husband. So this word teaches us that that's forbidden because it says he has to cleave to his wife. He can't cleave to his husband. That's forbidden. And then they become one flesh, it says. That's coming to exclude a beast, an animal, or a bird of any type, fowl. Because a human and all of these other mammals are not one flesh. He's a different category. V'namar, and finally, now we're going all the way ahead. Instead of talking in the beginning of Genesis, this was in chapter 2. Now we're going all the way to chapter 20 in Genesis with the story of Abraham and Sarah. When Abraham, as they were traveling to different countries, so Abraham, to protect himself, he told Sarah to say that she's his sister, because otherwise, if she's his wife, he was afraid they'd kill him so that they could marry her. So wherever they came, she would say, the story was, she's my sister. So over there's a verse that says like this. V'nemar, it says, Achoisi vas avihi. She is my sister, the daughter of my father. Achloi vas imi, but not the daughter of my mother. And she was for me for a wife. Okay, so first of all, she wasn't exactly his sister, she was his niece. But Abraham is trying to explain why it wasn't exactly a lie what he said. He said, she's my sister. And then the king says, you're married to her. Why did you tell me a lie? Why did you say she's my sister? So first of all, Abraham says, because I thought you were going to kill me and this. And besides the fact, he says, she really is my sister, my wife. How could that be? So he clarifies and he says clearly, she is the daughter of my father, because she's his father's granddaughter. She is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. Therefore, I'm allowed to marry her. So that verse teaches us, because this was before the giving of the Torah. So that verse teaches us that one is allowed to marry their paternal sibling, not their maternal sibling. Okay. Yeah, so the next number of paragraphs is all going to be discussing this prohibition of arayos, of adultery or forbidden relations, number 6 and 7 and 8. So we'll have to leave all that for next time. So we have to remember, we're in chapter 9, halacha 6. All right. Have a happy new year.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Okay. Hold on, I'm still.